Okay, so the other day we talked about Mendel and some of the basic concepts of genetics and learned that Mendel really, his biggest contribution was our understanding of traits either being recessive or dominant. So you should recall that dominant traits are traits that will always show up if they're present in the allele combination or the genetic code, and you would represent them on paper by a capital letter, and a recessive trait will be hidden if there's a dominant trait there. And I talked about like trait skipping generations, and things like that. So we're going to do something really fun today, and it's called Discovering Your Traits Activity. And you will see that you have a handout that looks like this, says Discovering Your Traits. And I'm going to walk you through this handout and go through the instructions of some of the traits that we are going to discover. Um, so let's read this little intro to Discovering Your Traits Activity first. So it says, have you ever noticed that brothers or sisters often look alike? Their inherited traits are what make their physical appearance so similar. An inherited trait is a particular genetically determined characteristic that distinguishes a person. The traits of children are determined by the traits that are passed on from their parents. Some traits are obvious in a family. A child's nose is shaped like their mother's nose, but some traits are less obvious. You actually may have similar traits to many of your classmates, even though you are not related to them. Some examples are the ability or not to roll your tongue, attached or unattached earlobes, dimples or freckles, naturally curly or straight hair. There are numerous traits in humans, but some traits occur more frequently than others. These are called high frequency traits. As a class, we're going to go through some of these traits to determine which ones you have and if they are recessive or dominant. Okay, so on your handout, you have this table. And what I'm going to do is take you through each trait. I'm going to talk about it, and Miss Stanley will pause the video when needed, and then you're going to determine for that particular trait which form of the trait you happen to have. And so we're going to go through several different traits here, and as we go through them, you're going to write on your paper the trait that you have. Don't say in this column yes or no, because that's going to get confusing. Be really specific. For example, the first trait we're going to look at is the ability or not for you to roll your tongue. So don't say yes or no. You're going to say tongue roller or non-tongue roller. And at the end, I'm going to tell you if that form of the trait is recessive or dominant, and you'll fill that part out. So let me pull this up. Okay, so we're going to look at high frequency traits. Recall that a trait is going to be any physical characteristic. Okay, so we have lots of examples of physical characteristics that we can see, hair color, eye color, height, things like that. These are all inherited traits. Look around the room. Do you happen to have traits similar to those around you? So as you kind of look around at your classmates, you may notice, well, so-and-so has brown hair. I have brown hair. So-and-so has, blue eyes. I have blue eyes. So you may have traits similar to people that you are not related to. So high frequency traits are traits that are common in the population, like the ability or not to roll your tongue, how your earlobes are attached. Are they attached or are they free? If you have dimples or freckles, if you have naturally straight or curly hair, if your thumb bends like a hitchhiker, if it's more straight, your hairline, smooth or cleft chin, or color blindness. So those are all examples of inherited high frequency traits. So the first one we're going to determine what you have is your ability or not to roll your tongue. So I don't know if you've ever tried this before, but you can either naturally do this or not. And this is so funny because some students just get mad if they don't have a trait or they can't do it. There's nothing you can do about it. It's completely inherited. You either have the trait or you don't have the trait. So the first one we're going to look at is roller versus non-tongue roller. So you stick out your tongue, and you can either do like the picture on the right that shows the tongue roll, or you can't. And I'm not talking about other shapes that you can make with your tongue. I'm simply a tongue roller. So determine right now, this is your permission to stick out your tongue at people and try to roll it, if you have the ability or not to roll your tongue. And you're going to go back to your sheet that you have right here. Okay. And on your diagram where it says tongue roller in the middle, okay, you're going to write tongue roller or non tongue roller for the trait that you have. And again, sometimes we need help determining our traits because we've never really looked at ourselves or, those particular, like our hairline and stuff. So Miss Stanley can pause this as needed, and you can go around the room and help each other try to see what trait you have. All right, so your earlobe attachment. So this one, what you have to realize is some people are more loby than others. I know that's kind of funny, but so this, I don't know if I can get my camera. So this is your lobe, like the part of your ear that you would pierce. And sometimes there's some space between your cheek and your lobe. That's called an unattached earlobe. Sometimes there's no space. It's just like directly attached to your face. So there can be varying, like some people have a lot of space and some people have a little space. So you just have to determine to the best of your ability which trait you have. So do you have attached, which would be the picture on the right, or do you have unattached, which is the picture on the left, or they're also called free? Dimples, this one should be easy. You smile. Do you have cheek dimples or not? And I would say at least in one cheek has to be here. We're not talking smile lines. We're talking actual dimples in your cheek. Widow's peak versus straight hairline. So for this one, my hairline's already pretty visible and you all can kind of see. But Miss Barnett, if I'm kind of pointing here, if y'all notice that my hairline comes right here to a little peak and it's got, like almost like a triangle kind of going up. So this is called a widow's peak. Now, this isn't a very strong widow's peak. This one on the picture on the left is stronger, or your hairline is just straight across where you don't have a peak in the middle. So you're going to help each other, and you're going to have some people who have bangs or their hair, they're going to have to kind of pull back so that we can see that portion of your forehead. Hand clasping right versus left. So I want everyone to take their hands, okay, without thinking, okay? Clasp them like this. Look down. Which thumb is on top? Okay, is your left thumb on top or is your right thumb on top? And so that's what you're going to write for your trait, that your left thumb on top or right thumb on top. That's your trait. And what's really weird is if you try to do it the other way, it feels really weird. At least it does to me. It doesn't feel normal. Bent versus straight pinky. So when you put your fingers together here, okay, I'm going to put mine together so that you can see. Where's my camera? Oh gosh, looks like backwards. So you're looking, so mine are considered straight. Okay, so you're looking, do they flare out a lot? Okay, and some people flare a lot, some people don't flare at all, but this is a true bent pinky right here. And so you're going to have to determine, are yours bent or are they straight? So for this one, you're looking at your second toe of your right foot if you need to take off your shoe, or maybe perhaps you already know. But you want to look at your second toe, and it's one of two things. It's either completely longer than your big toe, or it is shorter or equal to, like the picture on the right. So you have to determine, is it longer or is it not longer? That's what your trait's going to be, longer or not longer. This is just a little extra here. This is kind of interesting, but the shape of your toes can actually be an indication from your ancestral descent here. So you can see here, which foot looks more like yours, and it can tell you if you have Egyptian or Roman or Greek, German, Celtic, African descent. Is kind of cool. So wanted to show you that. Vulcan versus non-Vulcan. So simply taking your hands, can you do this with both hands without any effort? Okay, that's considered Vulcan fingers. If you have to sit here and try to like pry them apart and you're like sweating trying to keep them there, that's not Vulcan. So Vulcan is both hands being able to do this. So you're either Vulcan or non-Vulcan. Your chin. So you're simply going to look here, and sometimes you have to kind of go like this to see or do something, but some people have a slight little dimple here, and for some people it's more pronounced than others, but this is called a cleft chin if you've got a dimple there or you've got a smooth chin. So for this one, I want you to imagine you've just taken a shower, you just kind of towel dry your hair, brush your hair, and do nothing else. What is your hair going to do? It's either going to naturally dry straight or it's going to have some curl. Now, there can be different variant. You can have like slightly curly or wavy or really curly. So I'm going to say if there's any wave at all in your hair, you're going to call it curly. If it lacks any kind of wave, you're going to call it straight. Your thumb, hitchhikers versus straights. You're going to take your thumb, okay, and you're going to hitchhike like this. Now, even though mine bends back a little bit, this is actually a straight thumb. So hitchhiker's thumb would almost be like if you take a plane here, it would almost be like a 45-degree, like this picture on the right where it really, really bends back. So even though mine bends back just a little bit, this is actually considered a straight thumb. I do not have hitchhikers. So you're going to have to determine, is your thumb straight or is it hitchhikers? So mid-digit finger hair. You're right. So some people, do have this. Sometimes it's hard to see because it is really, really fine and light, especially on people your age, because you tend to get hairier as you get older. It just kind of happens. So you're looking at, in this picture, you can see hair on mid-digit fingers or no hair. I'm going to move my picture here. So we are simply looking at this portion, the mid-digit, okay? Not here by your knuckles, but the mid-digit hair. And so the best way to look at that is if you kind of just bend and you're going to look, and I'm looking for hair right here on my mid-digit, not here, but here. Okay, so I don't have any, and you'd have to, sometimes it's really fine in light hair, so it's hard to tell. So you either have mid-digit hair or you don't. PTC taster. We might have skipped that accidentally before. So for this one, this is going to be really fun. Let me pause this real quick. Okay, so for this one, there is a chemical. It's called PTC. This chemical is not bad. Okay, this is, you either genetically have the trait where you can taste this, or you don't have the trait and you can't taste it at all. And it all has to do with the amount and size of your taste buds. So someone who's a taster, who has the ability to taste this, is going to have more of these taste buds. They're more closely put together and they're smaller, whereas a non-taster has larger taste buds, which are less in number, and they're further apart. So, but what's interesting is this kind of chemical is found on some vegetables, kind of like not broccoli, but Brussels sprouts is one of them I know of. So, it's similar to the genetic trait that makes cilantro taste like soap. I don't know if any of you have heard of that, but some people don't like the taste of cilantro because of their genetics. And so this is a chemical that you either can taste or can't taste. It's not a pleasant taste. It's not going to hurt you. It's like bitter. And so there's a little piece of fine, thin paper like this. It has this chemical on it. And Miss Stanley is going to give it to you. And she's going to give you a little piece right here. It's real thin, okay, paper. And you're simply going to put it on your tongue. I'll demonstrate it for you. And you're just going to let it sit for a couple of seconds. The paper is so thin, it almost like starts to dissolve. You're going to let it sit for a couple of seconds, and then you will know if you're a taster. Now, some people are a mild taster. Some people are super tasters. And I'm going to say if you can taste it at all, you would know in a couple seconds you're going to call yourself a taster. If it just tastes like weird paper, you're not a taster. Okay. And the face that you make is sometimes funny. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to see it, but she's going to give everyone this paper. You put it on your tongue, close your mouth. Oh my God. Ugh. Ugh, it's so gross. Okay. I'm throwing it away. Please don't eat the paper. Alex Drake, I'm talking to you. And then, your saliva over time, don't be going to ask to use the restroom and get water. Your saliva will kind of dilute the taste, but you will know if you're a taster or not. So this is a genetic trait that allows you to taste a chemical that is found in actually some vegetables. And so you may have a legitimate reason of why you don't like certain kinds of vegetables. Not all, but certain. So now we've gone through our list of traits. So you should have this filled out, okay, for the trait that you have. And now I'm going to tell you dominant or recessive. So you're going to go through each of your traits and you're going to put a D or an R to indicate if that form of the trait is the dominant or the recessive trait. And so what I want you to think about is, do you think that you're going to have more dominant traits or that you're going to have more recessive traits, and why? And then we're going to kind of take some data from the class. So these are, I'm going to give you the dominant form of the trait. If you have the other form, then you are recessive. Just put an R. And again, do use a D for dominant and R for recessive. The tongue roller is dominant. Unattached or free earlobes, dominant. Dimples, cheek dimples are the dominant trait. If you have your right, I forgot to do this one. If we forgot to do this one in the video, but just if you are more right-handed in general, this is not the hand clasping. If you're more right-handed in general, that's dominant. That's one I skipped, sorry. Widow's peak, dominant. Left thumb on top at hand clasping, dominant. Bent pinkies, dominant. Your toe longer, dominant. Vulcan fingers, dominant. Cleft chin, dominant. Curly hair, dominant. Taster, if you can taste PTC, that's dominant. Hitchhiker's thumb, dominant. And hair on mid-digit, dominant. That's dominant. So those are the traits that are dominant. So if you have the other ones, you're going to put recessive, and she may want to pause this screen so that you all can see this. So what you're going to do now, I'm going to go out of this, but we're going to do some fun little application activities for your results. And you're actually going to be getting a leaf here in a little bit, and you're going to be putting your leaf on the tree, a specific branch, and we're going to see what branches are more common and what branches are less common. So I'm going to go back to this right here. So at this point, you should have this entire chart filled out. And what I want you to do right now is count up how many dominant and recessive traits you exhibit and write them here. So you're going to count up all your D's and write them down, and count up all your R's. So your results may have surprised you. Did you have more? Raise your hand if you had more dominant results. Raise your hand if you were more recessive. Raise your hand if you were completely equal. We're going to look at some of our class results and see if as a class we have more dominant or recessive traits. So the first thing I need you to do is to count up the number of total students in the class so that you can get percentages. You're going to put that number there. And the best way to do this, I'm going to have Miss Stanley kind of do this, but she is going to call out a trait like unattached lobes. And you're going to raise your hand if that's you, and she's going to write it down. And everyone would write that down. And then you can use math to determine what the other half would be, or you can have students raise their hand for that. So she's going to go through and gather this data. So did our class have more dominant or recessive traits? Discuss. Now what you're going to do is use the wheel of traits below and follow along according to your traits, and you're going to land on a number. So here's the wheel of traits right here. And so you are going to start here in the middle, and you kind of just take your finger and you follow along for the trait that you have, and you end up at a number. And we're going to see if you're the only person with that number in this class, or if you land on a number with other people. So the first question is, do you have attached earlobes or unattached or free? So if your earlobes are attached, you're starting over here. If your earlobes are unattached or free, you start here. And then the next thing is hair on the mid-digit. Okay, yes or no. Keep following. Widow's peak or no widow's peak. Curly hair or straight hair. And then smooth chin or cleft chin. Dimples on your cheeks, yes or no. You end up with a number. And once you determine what your personal number is, I want you to write it down on your page. And then Miss Stanley can maybe ask, if there's anyone who has the same number, you can kind of go through the class and kind of see. And it's always interesting to see, because even though these traits might have high frequency in general, the combination of them may be more rare. The last thing you're going to do is to complete what's called the tree of traits. So Miss Stanley's going to give you a little leaf here, and I have the tree up on one of the walls in the classroom. Okay, and you're going to get this little leaf, and on the leaf, it asks you questions about a couple of traits, if this would focus. It asks you about your earlobes, if they're attached or unattached. Can you taste PTC or not? And can you roll your tongue or not? So you're going to answer those. And then you're going to take this to the tree, and you start at the base of the tree, and you'll kind of see, and you're just going to follow the branches based on the traits that you have, and you end up at a branch. Okay, and so you kind of start branching out to determine, following your traits. You're going to put a little piece of tape on the back here, and then once you figure out what branch you're at, you're just going to put your leaf on that branch, and then by the end of the week, once all students have gone through this activity, we're going to have branches with leaves, and we're going to see, oh, this was really, really common, this combination of traits, or there's no one on this branch, or there's only one little old leaf on that branch, so that may or may not be you. So we're going to be looking at that. So she's going to give those out. And finally, you have an assignment, and your assignment, it's posted on Schoology, is basically, this is what it looks like, high frequency traits homework, that you are going to choose at least one relative, preferably someone you're actually blood related to, but that may not be possible. So if you don't have someone you're blood related to, mom, dad, brother, sister, then you can, just choose someone that you live with. And you're going to take them through some of the traits, and you're going to write the trait that you have and the trait your relative has. So I'm going to ask you to look, at some of the traits that we looked at today, and then I want you to list how many traits you and your relative had in common, how many were different, and you will submit that to Schoology. So I hope that you've enjoyed this lesson, and I will be back on Monday, and we will discuss a lot of these things that you've been talking about.